Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Fred Crave and I'm going to be your host because today we have a special guest speaker, Taylor Sharpe. There we go. This is the Dallas chapter of the FileMaker Pro users groups, and I just want to let you all know there are 3 in the country that meet live, and so we want to welcome everybody to come meet with us live. We often have lunch, like we always have lunch. We just need to know that you're coming. Just do the RSVP, and we're delighted to have you here live and in person with Taylor and me. The co-directors for the FileMaker Pro Users Group Dallas are Taylor, Greg, and now Paul Mitchell will be taking over my spot as one of the co-directors, but I will continue doing what I've been doing behind the scenes. Chris is in the back right now doing our recording. There is no pause on error coming up. But on October 20 to 23 is full access. Full access is in the beautiful hills of Los Altos, California. And next week, Build, Grow, Learn. Now this isn't something that you're probably going to be able to get to because it's Monday through Wednesday, but we are sending some of our Harmonic employees there, including Paul Mitchell, Matt Monroe. They're going to be speaking on some FileMaker and AI stuff. Isn't that great? To business people. And Daisy Graves is going to be talking about getting our time together and doing a good life as we're all working. All right, let's have a round of applause for Taylor.
Okay, today there's really only two things that we're talking about. One's going to be a script step and one's going to be a calculation in the FileMaker calculation engine. And so the script step is go to list of records, and the function is the GetRecordIDsFromFoundSet. Those are brand new in 2025. They don't work in anything before. It's all only for new stuff that when we get everybody to upgrade on the latest version. A little bit behind the scenes right now. First of all, we obviously buy FileMaker because it does a lot to hide certain things from us. Obviously, it gives us a user interface, a reporting and layout tools, business automations, but under the hood, FileMaker does a lot of things to make us more efficient, and that's why FileMaker is often considered rapid application development versus lower level would be like programming language, Swift, C++, things like that. And so a lot of times there's a balance that companies like Claris has to do to hide things from us that we don't need to know. And then sometimes you find out some of those things can actually be useful if you understand how they work and then where you can make use of them. And so the record ID is one of the things. Obviously, when we're buying a database system is one of the tools that we're buying in Claris. And so obviously it's managing how the data is stored, how records and fields work, other things that we're aware of but we don't do much with, like indexing. Okay, in FileMaker we can turn indexing on, we can turn indexing off. But if you talk to the programmers, there's a whole level of what type of indexing? Is indexing optimized for numbers or integers only or long word character sets? There's a whole lot of things that get hidden from us. So there's always a balance that Claris has to do. How much do we want to give more power to the developers without overwhelming and confusing them so that it's not, you're digging too much into the weeds? So one of the things that's mostly been hidden from us have been record IDs. We have had a function called GetRecordID since before version 6 at least. We're aware that is how FileMaker is thinking of things. So when we look at, we can build a file that doesn't have any primary keys, but guess what? FileMaker has a primary key for it. That's that record ID. And so there's no such thing as not having a primary key. It just might not be in your field set. And so a lot of us in the past have played with such things as you can create a calculation field that's GetRecordID. That became very useful because then I could tell what is the record ID that at least FileMaker thinks of this. And we could play some other games of use the summary list function to say, give me the list of the found set that I happen to be in. And in the past, that had grown to, we could put that in a global field and we can create a relationship so that we could go to related record based on that list set, and that's in essence what GoToRecord is doing. It's using these list IDs to do that, but you can do it with other than just the found set that you're on. You can do it whatever you put in the global field. So there were a lot of things that we're playing around, but we weren't really directly calling those list IDs or going somewhere based on them. So for example, have you ever decided I want to run a report somewhere else in like, for example, perform script on server, then it comes back and okay, I got the report, but it's not sorted in the order it was before, or how to get it back to that exact state that the person had. It was sorted this way and they were on record 25 of 100 or something. That involved us having to go through tricks of figuring out, storing variables where they were before they left that, or on the server when it was run, and then passing that information back. There were ways of doing it, but it was a little harder to do that context stuff. And so FileMaker has given these tools to let us do a little bit better management with that. Now, one reason to look at more of the lower level things instead of higher level things is often for performance reasons. Okay, I have a lot of customers that love my FileMaker solution, and almost every one of my clients asks me, can you make it go faster? Anybody heard that before? we always, and usually when they do that, they also preface it with, I want you to add some more features and make it go faster. So not take away things it's doing, but let's add more to it and somehow get faster. So a lot of times we're figuring ways to do that. One of the neat things about working with record IDs, because that's how FileMaker natively works on things, is that this is much faster than the normal tools. What's our normal tool to deal with a record ID? Find, okay? And most of us think finds are pretty fast. They generally are. Now, of course, you can search an unindexed calculation field and it can go slow, but an index field file is generally pretty fast. But guess what? Calling things by record IDs and totally bypassing the find thing, it's just milliseconds. Boom! Your user interface probably isn't as fast as FileMaker's thinking it out. You are really getting down to under it. So working with record IDs has some benefits, particularly when you're working in large found sets. And for example, so when we have record sets that aren't just 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 records, when we have 1.7 million records and things like that, sometimes there's various reasons that you're looking anyway to squeeze the speed out of stuff. By the way, that's the Texas Comptroller database. And there's harmonic data. I just searched for you guys, but this is the entire Texas Comptroller database. By the way, I don't have anything proprietary. I've just downloaded it from their website. And then, of course, here's the franchise Secretary of State that does all the LLCs and franchises and things like that. As you can see, they got 4.7 million records in there. So every LLC possibly in Texas, a whole herd of these. And so I download this about 4 times a year and do updates. It's a good one for us to play around with record IDs because there are lots of records in there. So moving along. Okay, so first of all, we have the function of GetRecordIdsFromFoundSet. So this is the Claris web page that gives the instruction of what this, it's a really long function name. That might be the longest one. I can't think of anything longer, but they really strung it together. But it's descriptive and it's better than I think that was good that they kept it. But it's just simply, as it says there, it returns record IDs from the found set as a list or a JSON array. So whatever found set you have in FileMaker on the layout that you're on, it will return the record IDs of that found set in the order that you have them in the found set. If they're sorted, you get the record IDs are even sorted. So that's really important too. You'll find out when you're trying to restore context. It's very useful to be able to get that back. I guess if I had made the function, I probably wouldn't have had the type in there, and I think type actually is optional. But if we come down here and look, here's where it gives the list of the parameters as just type. So you can see type there. And it returns text version, and it originated in this version here. So the types we have are, if you put a 0 in, you don't have to put the word value numbers here. You just put a 0 in. You will get here are the IDs that you would return like this, 1, 1, 5, 21, 22, those are IDs of the found set that you have right there. You can also do that as a JSON string, which can be useful. I never really understand. Record IDs are always numbers. They're not hex or anything like that. So I understand JSON number, returning them as numbers, because they're only going to be numbers. So I never understood why they did this one. But I guess it doesn't hurt. So they did that. Then these next two are really rather cool. Ranges. Ranges are very useful because it can make your return set much smaller than if you're listing every ID. And if you're listing a few hundred or a few thousands or tens of thousands, probably not bad. But you know what? If I wanted to get the record ID of that list of that 4.7 million records, well, I might bog down my little data viewer. Then you just get stuck in the force quit, go back, don't do that again type thing. This range thing is really neat, that instead of having 1, 5, 21, 22, 23, and 7, it gives you 1, 5, and then 21-23 and 7. So it makes your return set much smaller for when record IDs are sequential. And there are a lot of times you'll find out when you're doing found sets that they are sequential. So it makes the list a lot smaller. And you can do that also as JSON, or you can do it as this return array right here. So let me go show some examples of doing that. Let's see, we've got 13 records here on whatever my found set is. We're going to come in here. I'm trying to remember, is it optional? Do we have to put anything in? About to find out. Nope, it's not optional. So 0 is probably going to be the most common that you want to use. So if you don't know what else to do, use 0. It's just a paragraph delimited or carry return delimited list of the IDs that we have in this found set of 13 records right here. See, we got 13 records right here. That means we're seeing 13 of these right down here. That was quick and easy. And we can also go do our JSON string, or if we change it to a 2, I don't know if you guys are seeing this, but the 1 was a string down here. See here? So we have 0 is just a list array, 1 is the character string. And then here's the one that makes more sense to me as far as if you're returning JSON, as you do it as numbers. And then here 3 and 4 are, if you're doing that, will show ranges, but we don't have any ranges in this small found set. So they're just showing the same as if you had just done a 0. 0 and 3 will be the same because there aren't any ranges in this found set. But that can be really useful. Let me do one where I create, let's see, we are going to hide this, we're going to show all, and then I'm going to well, actually, let's see. Let's just do this. I want to do, so look at this. I did, number 3, you notice, was the ranges for 1.7 million records. And instead of getting 1.7 million IDs back, I was thinking I was going to get 1 range set, but apparently I got a break in there somewhere. So I got 2 range sets in there. Much smaller. So for 1.7 million records, I only had 2 record sets returned. Okay, now, while that's better than the long list, when is this actually useful? If you do a search in FileMaker, how many of us are familiar? You do a find, and you find one record, and then you do new record requests, and you put another ID or name or whatever, another ID. One thing that's nice about these range things is you can also do that if you get a range back and you want to do a find in FileMaker. You can do a find and you can say, give me each of these rows, but where you have, searching for the row ID, but where you have a dash, substitute period. Then you're able to take this return list of IDs and quickly convert that into a refined set if you need to do that in FileMaker. That would be based on those IDs. Just in this case, it would be 2 finds, and this would have found 1.7 million records, just not so fast as the next feature we're going to talk about. But for right now, if you just want to do a find, the return set with the ranges, that number 3 right here, is going to be really useful for converting to FileMaker finds down the road, getting back to a particular set of records if you need to do a find. But guess what? We also have another function that we haven't talked about, the script step. So we can get these IDs, so we want to do something with them. So now that we're getting these IDs, okay, we can look down at the low level of FileMaker. How does FileMaker actually identify in each of these records? We've got that record ID of how FileMaker does it, and so we're going to look at go to list of records. Guess what? We had talked about we could use that return set to go and do finds of FileMaker, but in our discussion before, remember we talked that finds take a lot longer than using record IDs. And so this is part of where the performance issue comes in. Yes, we could go do a find, and in most cases FileMaker is really fast, but sometimes it's really not. But guess what? We have this feature called go to list of records, and we can use that same return set of IDs to go to a list of records. So basically we've got this set of records, so we can go in a layout, say go to a layout and return these IDs, and that is much faster than doing a find in FileMaker. Dennis Burnham, speak.
Question is, when you delete a record from a database, the record ID is gone. Does that absence of a record ID break the range?
Yes.
Thank you.
Another question. So if you have a found set like you have, and they have a contiguous set of IDs to get ranges, but then you do a sort to change that order, do those ranges get broken so they come out more individual?
Absolutely. Because getting the list of the found set of record IDs respects the sort order. So you can go from just having a little list range to all of a sudden you have a whole lot of IDs. But that's also very useful for restoring, because we're able to restore to that sorted order if you have it, or whatever that order is, however you ended up with it.
Smart.
It can be very useful. But yes, as soon as you do a sort, all those ranges suddenly become very, if I'd done a sort of that 1.7 million records by city and state or something like that, then suddenly I'd have probably 1.5 million in the list that it would return. Yes,
perfect.
Absolutely.
But that's the cool clue, is that you can use that to reestablish the sort order. That was good. Thank you.
Yes, and since FileMaker is so famous for fast sorting. Okay, so we have the go-to list of records. How are we going to use this? This is a script step. It's not a calculation function. So this is to be used when you're in a script and say you already have a list of record IDs you want to do, or however you want to go to them. This is a function that lets you go to that list of records. So the options are list of record IDs. You can say show record using a layout. So you want to say, if it's not the same layout you're in, what layout do you want to go to? You can say show it in a new window. So maybe you want to have it automatically open a new window, which I'm sure won't happen on WebDirect. You'll have a new window in those cases. And you can do animations if you're on doing FileMaker Go stuff. Let's take a look at this. I always find it interesting. FileMaker Pro partial. Oh, I finally realized what the partial was. I was trying to figure out what the partial. It's animations. So let's get down here. We have our description. The script step goes to a specified layout in the current window or a new window. If then changes the found set of records and its sort orders to the specified list of record IDs that you're going to provide. So here we go. So for example, now the neat thing about this is you can use any of the 0 through 4 options, and you don't have to tell it I used the 0 type or the 4 type or the 3 type. It just looks and says, is it JSON? Then it's 3 or 4, and it automatically figures it out for you. So that was nice. So you can feed it these and any of the 4 or 5 different methods that you can feed it, and it'll figure it out for you. As you can see, you can provide a regular list of values here. You can do it with a range set. You could also do that. This is what you're putting in the parameter of the script step. So, and we're going to go look at those examples here, but you can also do arrays, and then you can do array objects of record IDs as record pairs. So there's all kinds of ways that you can feed it. The reality is, most of the time, I'm just doing the 0, whatever, or the 3, and that seems to work real well because, anyway, I like the JSON stuff, but anyway, sometimes I don't use it if I don't need it. But we certainly want to go look at examples. Our example is we're going to want to save the context into an array and do something with it. Let's talk about where you'd want to use this. Obviously, if you've got a report that you want to share with someone. And for example, if you're thinking of this, probably a lot of you developers immediately realize this is all FileMaker snapshots really is. So you're being able to do what FileMaker gave to us as snapshots the same way in your own script instead of just using their little function things. It's cool to be able to control that yourself. Anyway, you got your little snapshot is another way of thinking of things, and you want to be able to record that. When do you want to record that? Obviously, like after you've made a report, but if you're thinking ahead, and this is the idea that Steve reminded me of last time we were talking, is wouldn't this be really useful for a back button? Okay, so you've got one state and the customer often wants to hit back button or go somewhere else, and then they realize that's not where I wanted to do. I want to cancel. I want to get back to where I was at. Getting back to where you're at is, unless you really planned out the scripting how you got there, has always been a challenge in FileMaker. This suddenly makes getting back to a state. If you record where save in a variable or a global field, the context of what's the layout and what are the found record IDs on it, it's real easy to return to previous states and implement things like a back button in addition to just show me a particular report. So there's a lot of navigation things that we can start doing with remembering these states. So I went and made a script so that I could do some finds and have it remember things. So I'm going to show you the script here. So here's the script that I made. And the first thing we did was save context into history. So if we're going to make use of this, we have to first save a state. So how are we going to save a state? I created this save context into a history array. So this is where we're going to save the information. And so I create some JSON here, and then I'm going to store it in a global variable. So to see what we do right here, this is the information that I have chosen to save. Now, of course, remember, you guys can save whatever you want. You are totally controlling everything that's happening here as the developer, so this is neat here. So the things that I'm saving that I'm going to want to restore on this state are obviously layout name and layout number. I really probably only needed to do one of those, but it was just easier for me to I usually use layout number, but I like layout name in there because I don't memorize what the numbers are. It's just useful that way. Then I give the window name in case I want to rename the window to whatever it was. Then I want to pass the IDs. This is where we're using the function, the GetRecordIdlistSet, so that we want to restore it to. What record number we're on. If you don't pass what record you're on, if you restore the state, you're just going to be on record 1 always. So you have to pass the information on what record number they were on. If they were on record 25 of 100, if you want to restore that state, you got to include the record number. And then you can get into other things that you may or may not want to do, and I just threw these as examples. Maybe you want to restore the window height and width of whatever it was generated by. Any of those other things that we can do are the attributes of a layout you can pass along. But this is just an example of what I was passing along in my little script to store the state. And of course, I've created it as a variable here, and that variable is a $$ variable, which of course goes away as soon as the script stores. So we need to save it in a global variable that is going to save that state so that we can go back to it. So this is where we're going to just JSON set elements. I've created a global variable I'm calling $recordIdHistory, You can call it anything you want. And I'm just adding to whatever that array is, this JavaScript context that I had stored in the previous variable. And I'm just storing it in there, and it's storing it as a JSON type 3. That's all we're doing to save this information. By doing a plus, I can just add to infinity how many of these I want to do. Of course, as you realize, you probably don't want to do it forever, so I've also addressed that too. So I've also gone down here and said, hey, you can pick some number. I picked 20, it could be 500 or whatever. How many array states do you want to save before they fall off? So what I've also done here is I've added in, if there are more than 20 keys in there, delete whatever the first one was and then keep the last 20. So I'm saving the last 20 states. If you don't, if you want, you don't have to put that in here. You can just save all states if you want. But I like to put limits on my variables so that they don't grow, because I always find some customer that leaves their machine on for a month at a time, and you open the data viewer and it won't even open there. So this is how to store the state. So let's see that happening here. So I've got 13 records here, so I'm going to add to the history right here. So I've created that button here. I run this right here. So I have added to the history. So how do I know I've added to the history? We got to go to the data viewer and we got to go take a look. So here we go. This is my first state that I saved. Okay, let's go save another one. So let's come over here and let's see, let's find in Houston anything that is, what's a Houston zip code? 77, there we go. Oh my gosh, there are too many of those. We'll omit a few of them so we don't get too ridiculous here. Okay, so 549. So we got these right here. So I'm gonna come over here, and then I've created this just little card window I'm sticking this stuff on, and I'm saying add to history. So it got added to the history. So if I come here and look at my history, I now have a second state right here. So here's the first state, then here's the second state. The second state has a whole lot more IDs, but you notice I'm saving in ranges to minimize some of the size of it. But if we come all the way down, let's see.
There you go.
There we go. Now we're down at the bottom. So there's the last of the IDs, and it told us we did it in something called sales tax main, and it gave the window height and width and the window name. So we've got that. So let's go do another one over here. So we are over in the franchise tax side of things. So let me come over here and find 5201, I don't know, Commerce Street. Let's see. 179 of those. Okay, so that's a good one. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say add to history. So that add to history could be something that if you have on mode change or something or any layout, you could have script triggers that triggers it off, or if you have a back and forwards button or things like that, you can, whenever you want to save that state, you could just run that button to save that state. And of course, I'm just saving those states in the order that they came in, but you may want to identify the state as to what you might want to return to, because you might not want to be returned to whatever just the last found set was. You may have one from way before. If you're wanting to return these states, then we have to have a script to go back and restore those states. So let's go look at my script to restore the state. This is where we use the script step, the go-to list of records, to restore that state. What I've done is we're going to restore the context from history array. So we've got our history array right here. And we're going to, first of all, go out and list the keys that are in there. There should never be more than 20, because I set a limit of 20, and it says, give me the last key. So I want to know what the last key is, because we always want to get the most recent one. We wouldn't want to get the oldest one, so let's get the last key. And then whatever that last key is, we're going to use it to get that particular element of the record ID. So here's our record ID history. We're going to get whatever the last key was, so we're returning the very last state that was obtained. So this would be particularly what you would want to do if you're using like a back button. So you'd want to get the last state. And so once we have whatever state that we're wanting to return to, which could be a report, but it could be whatever, then we want to get the information from the script that we've called here, that I'm passing script parameters. Remember, when we save the state, we want to be able to return the information from that JavaScript of what the state is, more than just the record ID. So we want to get the layout name and layout number. We want to get the record number that we were on, the window height, window width, window name. By the way, you don't want to name the window a window that's already existing, so I wrote a little while here that says if the window already exists, add a dash in the loop number after it. That way you don't accidentally rename something the exact name of an existing one. And then, of course, the most important things, the IDs. What IDs do we want to restore? This is the thing that is so much faster than doing a find. And this is where we say, go to list of records using this list of record IDs, a particular layout, and if we want to have it in a new window. So let's go look at the function as we see it right here. We've looked at it as in the web page instructions for FileMaker, but this is where it's more practical, where we actually look at it in the actual script. So here's where when we do the prompt right here, we're prompted, say, list of record IDs. We have to put that parameter in there. So however you want to pass the parameter, it could be you're passing it as a global field, but I like variables, and so you can just pass whatever it is right there, or you could just hard code them in if you wanted to. You have the specify field here that you can specify, put whatever you want in there, but variables are going to be the normal ways we're going to pass that. Then we're going to say show records using layout. So, we've got the record IDs. If you got the record IDs for one context and you go to a different context and you say show the record IDs, it'll show the record IDs, but of the other context. So you'll basically get some random whatever returned, not what you expected, because a record ID 1 exists in most all of your databases. Databases, tables. So if you switch tables and say, give me record 1, it's going to be a different record than the one that you started from. So very important that you need to specify the context by selecting this use layout. Okay, now you can do specify the layout specifically, and that's good if it's reports, but remember, we're trying to pass this as a variable. So we're trying to make it dynamic, so I was having it pass the layout by number, and so this is where we're just using the $layout number to pass what layout we want to go to. You could use a calculation by layout name too. Now, we don't have to, but you can say show the results in a new window. Particularly if it's a report or something like that, you're going to want to show it in a new window. It'll be, most of the time, I'm assuming that you're going to want a new window. So you come over here and you probably recognize the new window options. It's the exact same new window options you have in other places in FileMaker. And so I was like, oh, great, I recognize this exactly. It's the new window script step. So I know everything on here. You know what the first question, as I started filling this out, befuddled me when I first looked at this. I thought, this is real simple. What really befuddled me is, tell me here, what's the difference between this and this?
We're supposed to guess.
Because you can do other files from that one. Use other access layouts.
That's what literally as late as last night, I was trying to figure that out. I said, I didn't want to come here and look like an idiot in front of everybody. It turns out that this is the exact same as this. And if I change this, it's going to change that. They aren't different things. They are the same things. And it just confused me by being in two different dialog boxes of the same script step. They are the same thing. So if I change something in here, when I click OK, whatever I change it to is going to be right here. One of those weird little quirky things. But otherwise, it's the exact same window script step we've used everywhere else. You'll notice that I've brought over the variables of the window height and window width that we passed over in the JavaScript. Yeah, JSON, not JavaScript, JSON. And I also like to stagger my windows by 50 or 100 characters so that it looks like it's a new window and not on the same one. That's just personal preference, but that is the go-to list of records option. And if you use that, you get a very blazingly fast return result just like that. And we will show that to you in just a minute. But before I do that, any questions on that script step?
I just posted a question, Taylor. If anyone knows, does the go to list of records script step return an error? It's picking up on Dennis's question earlier. If in between the capturing of the record IDs and the use of the record IDs using the go to list of records, if a record was deleted, does it kick an error code saying, hey, I'm missing some of these?
It does. I think it's 885 or something. I forget. I got it. It returns it. I don't remember what it is offhand, but yes. It also returns an error if you choose a layout that's invalid, like a layout number that's not right or a layout name that's not right. Yes, you do get errors, so good thing to error trap. Good developers error trap. Rob.
So I would expect if you captured 100 records and then deleted one, it would return 99, but kick an error saying, hey, you're missing one.
Yes. But you can error capture to ignore it if you want and decide if you want to warn the end user or not.
Yeah, you could use the non-existing anti-filter function.
If you've ever used a snapshot, it does it the same way as you do a snapshot. You get a warning that some of the records are missing. You know?
It's not about the list of, it's not about that script step, the list of records IDs. It's about when you are storing the state, that you can store the, I guess, the mode of the window. So if you want to go back, you can go back to something that has that was being viewed in a different mode and put that in there.
Yes, and that's what we were doing up here when I was saving. Here are some of the examples of what I was saving. You can put anything you want in here, but the examples I was saving was record number, window height, window width, window name. But you obviously, any of those things that you want to control, you can control, but you have to save it. When you're saving the context, in other words, main thing you're wanting to save in the context is the record IDs, but there's more than just the record IDs. You want to save other states about the layout, including if it's in preview mode or whatever.
And I have one more about the IDs. You said you had the IDs in ranges. Can you give it a list of ranges?
Yes.
IDs.
It will automatically recognize any of the, 4 or 5 steps. So you can do ranges, you can do list return. So it's 0 through 4, any of those states, and you don't have to tell it which state you're sending it. It will automatically figure it out, which is nice. One other thing, just so you can see in here, I had in my script here, I also, whenever I go back to the last state, and you may want to do this or may not, but one of the options was I was telling it to delete the state that I just went to. So this is the example of whatever that last key was, it deletes it off. So if you're doing back buttons, you probably want to remove those are just navigation things that you can think about. It might not apply in your circumstance, but I was just showing you how to do it. So we've got the restore script. Let's see how it works. So let's say we've got our go to last history. That was the script that we just were working on. So I'm going to click that. Wham, bam, look, what do you know? That was my found set of Dallas Records 75201 down on Commerce Street. I can say, go to the one before that, and here's our Houston one that we searched on, all right there. And then here's the one before that had the 13 records. I don't know what I searched for, but as you can see, it pops up really fast, even when you have millions of records here. But where it really is going to be useful is particularly if you've saved a sorted record or report, that it'll be able to return that. This is real useful for saving context, returning context, and you'll all probably have a little set of custom functions and scripts that you'll be adding to your default ones like I have here. So that's for basically restoring and saving and restoring states. So let's move on here. A lot of times while you might be just storing the states that we were in as we were just navigating, where this is going to be real useful are these big long reports that you send as a batch report. And we've all been doing these batch reports, which is done, perform script on server, it runs on the server, and then you have a callback script, and that's a whole other thing that we're not going to cover here today. But when it completes, it comes back and does a callback to the user and shows the report. And the nice thing about it is instead of having to figure out the find and the sort order and things like that, the callback can use this list of record IDs for us to restore what was done on the server. So I have created a sample script that's going to perform, here we go, it's perform script on server and return and create the report. So it's going to run this, I'm going to tell it to run, it's going to run in the background. So what I'm going to do is I've told it to run a script with a script parameter that says PSauce generate example. So it's going to generate a sample report that I just said return some numbers on. And so we're going to do a perform script on server with callback, and it's going to say, it's going to run the script that we're in, which is called record IDs. It's going to pass this parameter, which is the PSOS generate example, and it's going to then run a callback script, and the callback script is going to return the state that was created on the server. So if we're going to see what's created on the server, just so that you can see what's going to be done when we do it run on the server, we're going to say, go to the franchise tax main. We're going to set the window name franchise tax main. We're going to browse. We're going to show all records. And we're going to loop through 20 records here where it's getting a random number. It's basically selecting random records. It's getting 200 random records. So it'll be a different found set every time. Then it finishes it. It's going to, basically it goes through, it shows all of them, those 200 random ones it omits, then it shows those, the omitted ones, so we'll only have the 200, and then we're going to, you have to return the information, so this is where I have a SR, which is script result, and this is what I'm returning, the script result. It's just like what we had up above when we were doing the context, setting the context history, so layout name, layout number, record IDs, record number that we're on, and window height, window width, and window name. And you can do other things if you want to include them, like Ralph was mentioning. You can put any information you want in there, and that will be returned in the script result for when it exits this script. And then when it exits, when it completes, then remember we've done the perform script on server with callback. It's going to run the callback. Here's our callback right here. So this is what it's going to run when it runs the callback. And we're going to have the $script result, and from that script result, we're going to get the layout name, layout number, record ID, record number, record IDs, window height, window width, and window name, and then we're going to use our GLR, I guess it's GL, go to list of records, and we're going to restore those records in a new window that we have created right here. So this will then just pop up on the user and show them. You can also get a little more user interface friendly by maybe prompting a dialogue, report done, do you want to see it, or whatever. This is the 3 scripts I've done, the one that's going to tell it to run and generate the report, the one that generates the report, and then the callback that is then going to show it to the end user. So let's see how that works here. So here's our little PSOS example. So I'm going to run this. So it prompts me, do you want to run it? I say run. Okay, we're off and running. So at some point it'll finish here, and hopefully not too long. Hey, there we go. So it went and found 200 records there on the server. And yes, there's our franchise tax results, all that just popped up randomly after it finished running the report on the server. All nice and quite fast, and of course everybody knows, particularly have clients with low latency, anything you can run on the server is going to be faster, so running these PSOS things over there is nice. But the nice thing is that you can return the context of IDs in that callback, and that's a lot faster than doing finds and sorts, which is what we had to do before.
It also bypasses the need to do things like enter find mode before you go to layout, and then do the find request. I would imagine it just does all that under the hood.
It does. It's pretty neat. So that's a way of certainly generating reports faster and better.
And it's much better than having to add schema that's required by a GTRR.
Yes, exactly, because we were doing the lists. I had a whole lot of these calculation fields where I had a record ID and then I had lists. I still will need the record ID, but the lists, I'll be able to get rid of a whole bunch of those fields, the summary fields that I have in my solutions right now.
And you can be in one file looking at records that live in another file and run something, send that to a script in the other file that does the go to list of records, or the, get lore? Get lore. And it'll just work. So
there you go.
No relationships.
Okay, I was thinking about something that you said way back in the beginning about how you didn't know why you would want to look at the JSON type as text instead of as numbers, because record IDs are numbers. So it reminded me of something that was, it was a question in our Jeopardy game that we played back at the Egg and I a number of years ago, which is that record IDs survive for the life of the file. And the maximum number of records in a file is, do you remember?
No, but quadrillion.
64 quadrillion.
Yeah.
So if you're working with an old
But
file,
that used to be on the test, the certification exam.
Yeah, that's right. Where there were 64 quadrillion questions. So I'm wondering if you were dealing with a very old file that had some record IDs that were huge in length, would it be better then to use the text method for JSON, because otherwise the numbers would be exponential displays of long numerals? Would that make sense?
Yes, I have not tested that. That is an interesting thing. We'll want to test that tonight. Good. I want to see if it does. I hope it doesn't, but you know what? I bet it does.
That's why I'm here, Taylor.
There we go, Mr. Know-It-All. Thank you, Dennis. One thing that is really neat is, okay, in FileMaker's SQL, even if you don't have a record ID field, FileMaker SQL always has row ID, which is the record number. So even if you do not have a field called record ID, a calculation called record ID, you can always search for row IDs with SQL. And this is really useful for if you have a found set, give me the list of IDs and substitute the carry returns for putting an in. I'll show you the example here for doing things with a found set if you want to SQL something about a found set that you're in. So let me show you that. This is where I'm going to show I've done a, whatever the current found set is, I'm going to go show you an example. What are the IDs? And I'm doing this. Now you have to do it in type 0 because you're going to want it in return delimited. And then I'm saying get, and it could be any fields you want or fields if you want. This one I wanted to return a field called all data because I'm trying to pass everything about that particular record from franchise tax where record ID in, this is, should be row ID in. And then we're substituting the IDs every time you have a carry return with a comma. I will say one thing I like about this GetRecordIDs from FoundSet, it's not like the list function. It doesn't put a return at the end. So I can just do the substitute and not have to worry about that last character in row ID. And this should return this SQL for whatever the found set I'm in. So let's go try that out. Copy to data viewer, and that way I can show it as we play. So we got a found set of 20. We're going to go to our data viewer. We're going to watch. Okay, and we're going to do the calculation. Okay, so you'll notice I used row ID, which is not a field. It's not a field in that database anywhere. You can always search for a record by the record IDs by using row ID. And as you can see here, I just had it return JSON because I was trying to get record information, but I could have put something else in here. I don't know, taxpayer number. Did I spell it right? So if I did this, say it just returned all the numbers, however you want to do. But that's a lot of times, if you're like me, you're trying to get information from a found set and transition to some context to do a report or do something differently. It makes it real easy with SQL to be able to grab that information this way.
Can you select row ID from FileMaker? So I get that you can use it in the where clause. Can you put row ID in the select?
I don't know, but we're about to find out.
And the reason I'm asking is because that would be really useful from the new Perform Natural Language
yes,
SQL query.
You can.
So that means we don't have to add, if it's just for the new Perform Natural Language SQL query, we don't have to add a row ID field. We can just put in the prompt
it's in the SQL
to ask for row ID to get the row ID to then go to the set of records.
There we go. There we go. Good idea, Steve.
For anybody who is familiar with OData, you can also call row ID in your filters and your selects.
Right.
It exists there.
Also remember, those are reserved words, and if you try to use them as field names, you will have problems. But anyway, same with naming a field UUID or.
One of the things that I've worked on in the past is on several of my clients is where I remove the FileMaker native menus out and have things like finds that are built into the interface with custom scripts for them. This is very helpful when you have a find that happens for someone that's scripted and it results in nothing, and then you don't have to go building a separate set of TOs and a relationship and have to go back and forth between those two to be able to get it all to work. This is extremely helpful for that. It makes it just a snap. So
There we go. There we go. Without further ado, if you haven't signed up for full access, you still can. And build, grow, learn, have fun next week, accomplish some good things. And next month, Soliant's coming to do Blaze Runner, Blaze something. Bill Heiser, which I think he used to work for Claris FileMaker back in. Yeah. So he's now with Soliant, so it should be a big show. It should be interesting. If you're trying to make FileMaker more of an enterprise end of things, I think this is one of those topics that will certainly cover that. So it'll be interesting. So see you guys next month, and safe travels and lunchtime.